Andrew Schulz was on the show, and the conversation shifted with a discussion about Meghan Markle's new Netflix series, With Love.
Andrew was surprised to hear that she had another show, and Chris joked that she's unstoppable and can't fail.
They then shifted to talking about why people dislike Meghan Markle, with Andrew suggesting that Americans are ambivalent towards the royal family.
The conversation took a turn when Chris mentioned that he had gotten a sperm count done after seeing Andrew's show in Austin.
Andrew was surprised and asked how it went.
Chris explained that he had used a mail-in test, but the results weren't great. He then went to a urologist in Austin, who diagnosed him with varicocele, a condition where the veins in the scrotum are inefficient.
Andrew shared his own experience with varicocele, saying that he had it since he was young and that it looks like someone threw up in your ball sack. The conversation then turned to the topic of microplastics and how they can affect sperm quality. Andrew mentioned that he had seen a documentary about commercial fishing and how it contributes to microplastics in the ocean.
Chris joked that they should just get it wrong and not worry about correcting themselves. Andrew then shared a story about how he had been chastised for drinking new tonic on the podcast, and Chris joked that he should clean the top of the can before putting it on the podcast.
They also discussed how Andrew's sperm sample had been affected by the force of hitting the cup, and how he had joked that it was like a car wreck.
Chris then shared a story about how Andrew had reached out to him and other doctors for advice on how to improve his sperm quality.
Andrew had been given a list of things to do, including taking pills and icing his balls every day. However, after 2 months, his sperm quality had actually gotten worse, and the doctor had told him to just go back to drinking. Andrew joked that his sperm is like a professional athlete that performs better when he's drinking and partying. Andrew explains that talking about his fertility struggles was a way for him to own his issues and not embarrass his wife. He found that sharing his story helped him feel less isolated and more connected to his audience. Andrew's comedy special is unique in that it's not just a traditional stand-up routine, but also a storytelling experience. The conversation then turned to the topic of why modern America feels so insane. Andrew thinks that people are reacting against the societal push to be more progressive. He believes that people are looking for something more authentic and real.
Chris and Andrew discuss how the internet can be a toxic place, and how people can be very cruel to each other.
Andrew thinks that people are more interested in being outraged than in having real conversations. He believes that people need to start listening to each other and having more empathy. Andrew also talks about how he thinks that the wealthy need to be aware of the fact that their lives are not valued by the rest of society. The conversation then shifted to the topic of relationships. Andrew thinks that one of the biggest issues is the Ike red flag culture that's taken over. People are so focused on finding someone who checks all the right boxes that they forget to actually connect with the person. They're more worried about being alone than being with someone they truly love. Andrew's wife, for example, loves him even when he's being gross or doing something disgusting. She's not put off by his quirks because she genuinely loves him as a person. That's what matters, not whether someone is perfect or not. But it's not always easy to find that connection. The conversation then turned to the topic of Andrew Tate, who's been making headlines recently. Andrew thinks that Tate's rise to fame was largely due to his ability to provide arguments and defenses for conservative views at a time when they were under attack. But now that being conservative is more mainstream, Tate's no longer as relevant. The conversation also touches on the topic of Elon Musk and his relationship with Donald Trump. Andrew wonders how their relationship will play out, considering Trump's ego and Elon's self-focused self-belief.
Chris Williamson thinks it's a dangerous cocktail given the stories he's heard about Trump's vulnerability and dislike of being upstaged.
Andrew Schulz thinks that Elon might not have the emotional intelligence to navigate this relationship, unlike J.D. Vance, who has managed to work with Trump despite their differences. The conversation shifts to Russia and its perceived threat to Europe.
Andrew asks if Chris Williamson feels an existential threat from Russia, and Chris responds that the UK feels closer to America than Europe. The conversation then turns to the topic of the Epstein list, which has been treated like a long-awaited album drop. Chris Williamson jokes that people are holding on to it like it's the Wu-Tang Clan's unreleased mixtape.
Andrew Schulz suspects that the Epstein list might be less interesting than expected, and that incompetence rather than conspiracy might be the explanation. The conversation then shifts to the topic of criticism and scrutiny. Andrew Schulz says it's about not taking it personally and remembering that feelings don't care about facts. It's about being okay with people thinking a certain way about you, as long as it doesn't negatively impact your ability to provide for your family. Andrew thinks that addressing these narratives can be challenging, especially when dealing with people who don't have a face or a genuine interest in understanding his perspective. He believes that trying to respond to every criticism or misjudgment can be futile, and it's essential to focus on creating art and engaging with people who genuinely care about his work. The conversation then turns to the topic of fuck you money and how it can give people the freedom to pursue their passions without worrying about financial constraints.
Chris introduces the concept of fuck you freedom and fuck you family, which refers to the ability to live life on one's own terms and prioritize family above external validation.
Andrew shares his experience of becoming a father and how it has changed his perspective on what truly matters in life.
Chris mentions a quote that says it's okay to work your 20s away, but not your entire life.
Andrew agrees that time is a valuable resource and it's essential to prioritize what's truly important. The conversation touches on the importance of time and how it affects both men and women, particularly when it comes to starting a family. Andrew reflects on how having a child has changed his perspective on life and how it's essential to prioritize family above external validation. The conversation then turns to the importance of representation in media, with Andrew saying that he'd love to see more portrayals of good, active fathers. He shares a story about a video that made him tear up, where a little girl tells her dad she's proud of him for going to the gym. Andrew thinks that's the kind of thing that can inspire people to want to be better parents. Main learning from video.io. The discussion touches on various topics, including relationships, fertility issues, and societal expectations. Andrew shares his personal experiences with Varicocele and IVF, highlighting the importance of vulnerability and honesty in relationships. He also emphasizes the need for empathy and understanding in conversations, rather than just presenting facts. The conversation also explores the idea of fuck you money and fuck you freedom, which refers to the ability to live life on one's own terms and prioritize family above external validation. Andrew reflects on how having a child has changed his perspective on life and how it's essential to prioritize family above external validation. The key takeaways from this conversation are the importance of vulnerability, empathy, and prioritizing what truly matters in life. By sharing his personal experiences and insights, Andrew encourages listeners to reevaluate their own relationships and priorities. Ultimately, the conversation highlights the value of authenticity and connection in building meaningful relationships and living a fulfilling life. To access the complete 32-minute summary and unlock detailed insights for each topic discussed in the video, please subscribe to Quick Podcast Summaries on Spotify and Apple Podcasts with free trial and later, just for the price of candy in most places. Happy listening!